Okay, Stellar Horizons. This is Compass's space game by Andrew Rader. Now, yeah, so there's a lot here. It's challenging my beer pong table setup that I have here. I can put more tables up. Okay, so when I first saw this, I kind of looked at it and said, it looks like a Eurofied High Frontier. And to be honest, it kind of is. It takes away a lot of the details that a High Frontier gives you. But those are brain-burning details, trying to figure out if you can reach point X with rocket A with any likelihood of success, carrying the stuff that you need and everything. There's a lot of pain involved in getting to the story in High Frontier. And this gets you to the story a little quicker. That's not to say it's an easy game, though. It's not that hard, but the rule book is very procedural. So if you know me, that's problematic because when I read something that's purely procedural, and it's not purely, but it's very procedural, and we'll get to that in a bit. But when I read something of that nature, I kind of don't capture what's going on. I'm like, okay, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What's going on? So I set it up and fiddled around with it a little bit and got through a little bit of the campaign, and now I'm going to start over. Now that I have sort of a basic idea of how things work. And actually, I followed the playthroughs of all things. If you know me, that's a pretty rare thing. But I used them to help guide a couple of the players, the North Americans and the Russians, who were given more detail as to their playthrough elements. There are things I didn't get to in the game. I only played a couple of turns, and the economy rolls around every 10 years. So I think I can handle that. Space combat doesn't look terribly hard, but again, it's something I haven't really played out and didn't want to. The game does come with some smaller scenarios that feature these other elements perhaps more or something. I don't know what to look at for that. We can take a peek when we look at the rolls. Some stuff on my decision to buy this. When I first looked at it, like I said, I looked at it and said, shit, it looks interesting, but I got High Frontier. Do I really need another High Frontier? And I tossed it around a couple of times. One of the reasons is the designer, Andrew Rader. He is involved in the WIF universe. Not that I'm a huge WIF person, but he wrote at least the modern Fatal Alliances. I don't think he wrote the original. I suspect that's... oh, geez, now I can't remember the Australian guy's name. But anyway, he designed... the reboot of Fatal Alliances, which I still haven't gotten to. Maybe this will put me in the mood for it. And I seem to recall he was involved in Der Weltkrieg. Unfortunately, Board Game Geek does not specify a developer at any point. I don't know if they used to. I know that people I would think are developers show up as designer in some cases, like... my brain's not working today, man. Avalon Hill guy, who basically has his fingers in every Avalon Hill game, but as kind of like the developer. Yeah, I'm not. My brain's not working right, but that's not too surprising. Those blood vessels filled with corona. Okay, but anyway. The fact that this seemed to have a little bit more military tendency towards it, and I'm thinking, wow, somebody who did a really heavy World War I adaptation of WIF, which kind of feels World War I-ish to me anyway, I'm interested in this. And when it came when the email came out that, hey, it's shipping now, and the pre-order price was still available from Compass, I was like, yeah, sure. And the nice thing about it was, I had some issues with my Prelude to Rebellion, one of the dice, and I told, for those of you who've been watching my videos, Compass has been really, really good to me in terms of, I had like 3 customer support issues. But this one was really weird. They kept trying to ship me a die in a manila envelope, and going through the post office, it would pop out. And so for the third one, I'm like, hey, you know what? I just ordered this. Just toss it in the box. And it came and was fine. But yeah, I felt like I was just, I don't know. Anyway, the first thing, let's take a look at what you get. Consider this the unboxing portion. It's a lot. When you actually open it up, these are all in counter punch, counter sheets, along with a bunch of these guys. You can see a fair amount of markers here. These are for bases. Every country has its own set of spaceships assigned to it. You're not going to be building your own spaceship here. That's not the focus of this game. This game is really about the, and it's not like High Frontier in that. It's about, let me go here. I want to do this. And you go do that. And there's a little bit of figuring out how to get the stuff where you want the stuff to be. But for the most part, if you want to do it, you can, if you can do it. If you're technically able to do it off of this, the technology tree. And that's what we have here. With a bunch of different technologies that you build up, prerequisites to the left, and as you follow these lines, you go to the right. There's nothing that's like dual prerequisite. So for example, this, I don't believe you need all 3 of these. Maybe you do. Maybe I'm misreading it. Yeah, I think you need all 3 prerequisites to go forward. Never mind. Exactly the opposite. Over here, you have a place where you keep track of the points that you're going to spend on these. Each one of these has a cost listed over here, and then the effect over here. And it's hard to read, which is one reason I printed out a player aid, which is this, which is the pure player aid designed by someone, and then a copy of the tech tree, made readable on a single sheet of paper. This would be very useful if I was tracking things, so the way this would be ideally used is each player has one of these pairs. It's supposed to be double-sided in like a laminated situation, so you can mark it up, or they could just write on pencil, but I think it's better with markers, and keep track of their techs as they go. Unfortunately, I'm going to be playing this out as a 7-player game. That's the maximum you can play. And in a sense, you kind of got to keep track of everybody's technology anyway, because the players that aren't in the game, the nations that aren't in the game, or groups, whatever. I mean, we got like Asia, which is India and Pakistan, once they settle their things out. Each of these groupings ends up playing as an NPC even if you're not in the game. Now, some of the scenarios may not work quite that way, but the grand campaign works that way. And the game actually kind of changes depending on the number of players, though, because you can do stuff with the NPCs that you can't do with other players, which is one of my little grumpy things. In addition to the tech tree, which is kind of like your normal civilization type game tech tree, you also have a policy tree, which works kind of like the technology. You get to add to your space policies as you go, but you don't have to pay for these. You just get these over time. This is your time track, and it's got, these are missions. These are also missions. This gives you an example of what missions look like. They tell you a place. If they have like CV on them, it means that you have to have a crewed vehicle to get this mission, and it has a point value on it that the mission's worth, and we'll get to that in a little bit. This is your terraforming. Certain planets or bodies can be terraformed and there's victory point bonuses to doing so. This is the initiative track. Certain, well, it starts at a certain fixed level, certain fixed order in the campaign game, but it does modify during the game. And you can see I got little flags over the different players for that. What do we got over here? We got a bunch of different resources, essentially. This is just money, ore, supplies, and fuel. Ugh. These are add-ons to your bases. Now, they're not in the best order that I have. So, for example, I really should reorder them. But we have supply stations, which allow you to build and refit spaceships. And then on the other side, we have a larger supply station. Those will upgrade to spaceports, which have pretty much the same functionality, but they can build something bigger. Okay. This can build everything. Okay. You have mining stations and which turn into refineries. You have research stations which sit on their own. You have defensive networks which help protect you. Remember, there is a military aspect to this game. And then you have settlements, which are pretty much worth victory points, but they also generate trade. These are markers for movement. These, when you find life at various levels, are exposed for that. What do we got over here? Pirates. Hey, can't have space combat without pirates. Asteroids, which show up and can be exploited. Politics markers. These are bonuses that you get for doing good things. Well, whatever. Things that make you look good. And you can expend them for a various series of purposes. Victory point markers, which you gain from completing certain tasks. And some of them are recorded elsewhere. So, for example, when you complete a mission, you get to keep the mission marker. But if you exchange a mission, you get a victory marker instead, whatever. These are the flags that you see over here. They're used for marking the tech tree, the policy tree, the initiative track, foreign relations. Every player has every other player's counter on their sheet. So everybody's keeping track of the relationships. These are going to be depletion markers as planets are discovered. Well, as they're explored, their value gets depleted. This is, well, there are random events in the game. And one of the random events is you're invaded by an alien, the solar system's invaded by an alien race or something. And there's a scenario that handles that, but then there's a way of just fitting that into the campaign as a possible event that happens in the campaign. There are a number of the scenarios, I think a couple of them are related to the campaign, are possible events in the campaign, which I think is very, very cool. We've already talked briefly on the missions. World cards. When the word is deplete, but basically when you get a successful enough exploration on a planet, you're allowed to draw a world card, and that impacts what can be obtained from that planet. But if somebody draws another world card, they can replace yours, whichever one was previously there, with the new one. Which is kind of weird. They can like make whatever you found go away by exploring it, but okay. For each nationality in the game, you have a set of ships, different types of ships. Orbiters, rovers, flyby, probe. These are all robotic. CV is crewed vehicles. LVs are lift vehicles. At the beginning of the game, you're going to need lift vehicles to pull off the Earth. If you start building ships in space and whatever, you may not need them so much. And as you start exploiting materials, you may not need them as much. Okay. I'm just checking Jupiter to make sure that you can't build a colony in Jupiter. I think the idea here is that you're building it in orbit. but I'll have to think about that or look at that. You have bases. Each nation has 6 bases. Those bases have holding boxes because, well, you have these improvements that you can build on bases, and also there might be ships and raw materials and stuff kicking around in the bases. What else? This is what's on Earth for your particular nation. Earth is just like everything else, so, you know, it would be pretty cluttered, given that everybody has got all their stuff there. Let's see. All right, so the planets. So each planetary disk contains an area around it, which I'm just going to call kind of the orbit area. It's not really specified that I found. I didn't look too hard, though, probably. It's got a little central area that I'm going to call the planet itself. If you're actually on the planet, you should be there. If you're somewhere out in orbit, you're here. It's got these transition boxes. When you make transitions between different planets, long distance journeys in the solar system, what happens is you mark how long it's going to take you to get there. Okay, so this is very different from High Frontier. In High Frontier, you're flying along. You may calculate that out and know that number, but you can change in mid-flight. Here you don't have that option. You program in where you're going, that's where you go, and then once you, well, you're able to change from that as well, I think. No, you have to get where you're going, I believe, because otherwise you can't calculate where you'd be in relation. It's basically linear. So it's counted as distance from Earth. So Venus and Mercury are -1 and -2 from Earth, and then +1, +3, +5, +7 as we go further and further out, all the way out to Alpha Centauri at +45. And so again, the same kind of terrain scope as you have in at least the expanded High Frontier. I don't know if I don't think I have the deep space exploration stuff. But yeah, I mean, you have the solar system all the way out, and then stuff that's a little further out from what we'd call the solar system, all the way out to Alpha Centauri in this case. Oh, you have a lot of information on one of these. So this is a radiation symbol because it's too close to the sun. Oh, yeah, we should go over what the materials are here before we go any further. So there are 2 copies of the rulebook, which is really useful. I've not seen a game to do that before. It's a really neat little thing with 7 players possibly playing. You know, it's quite often that a couple people will want the rules. There are 7 copies of this very limited version of the rulebook. This is most of what you need to look at, but every now and then you have to look at something in there, and probably 2 people will be looking at the rulebook at any given time. There are also 7 of these player aids. Yeah, they give you a lot of shit. They charge you a lot too, but you know, you're getting your money's worth in terms of total card stock, paper, etc. Okay, and this, other than this, which doesn't give you anything of interest, here it's going to give you something that allows you to calculate the movement. I don't know the asteroid harvest. I think that's just a die roll chart. This allows you to calculate how far, you know, you look at your distance and you have a multiplier. It's really just, you could do it with a calculator or in your head in most cases. This gives you something else that you could pretty much do in your head, which is how to add. But it also gives you an idea of how the board should be set up. There's other pictures and other ways of doing it. And then what the hell is this? This is all the information on all the planets. Now, I find this unreadable, even with my supposed glasses that are supposed to work on it. I don't know if it's a little smudgy or if it's just my eyes. I think it's just my eyes are getting bad enough that I can't read this very well. It's got a glare on it, etc. So for the most part, I call this thing pretty useless, to tell you the truth. 7 copies of it, though. What is kind of useful is this. It's a quick cheat sheet that tells you what different things are, However, I generally find myself having to look these things up anyway. This isn't sufficient so far for me. And so, I mean, knowing that this is radiation, well, I can tell that by the picture. But what the hell does that mean? Yeah. Okay. So, there are things that are near the planet, generally in the orbit, but obviously in the case of the sun, it is not in orbit around Mercury. So this would indicate, hey, I can watch the sun from Mercury. The Flyby Box is a particular place that you go. There's certain flyby, you temporarily go there when you're dropping down. As you're moving closer and closer to the planet, eventually you're in the general area of the planet at this point. The Flyby Box means that you're kind of close enough with a flyby robotic explorer to look at just about anything in that system. Orbital can orbit either the main planet or one of the other things there. So you could go orbiting the sun if you wanted. Probes are carried on board other exploration devices. And they basically increase. So you'll see this number here. That number is the exploration value. So this orbiter could be carrying a probe. The probe is, you're allowed one on each explorer up to your countermix limits. That probe is basically a one-shot, much better exploration attempt. Okay. So let's take a look at here. So this information here is the information about the sun observation, and it's giving you a few things. It gives you an explorer number. That's how easy it is to explore the sun by observing it. You cannot use crewed vehicles or rovers. Obviously, with the rovers, you can't do it. You're not going to be able to. So the rovers are like Mars rover. They're meant to drop down on the planet and explore the planet physically. So that's not going to work on the sun at all. But even CVs, you can't get that close with them. So, okay. It's treated as an orbit box. It is going to give you physics. That's the exploration here. There's no chance of life on the sun. We'll get to that in a moment. And it has this severe radiation, which is going to be a +10 malfunction rating, unless you have radiation shields, which is like a tech. Okay, so over here though, for Mercury, we have more information. This is a world box. This covers what's in the planet itself. It's a rocky planet. That's going to affect the world cards. When you draw a world card, the world card has to have the modifier word that's involved in what you're looking at. So here, there might be ones that say rocky, in which case you would be able to use them on Mercury. There might be ones that say planet only. I haven't seen any. This exploration value is linked to this. It's for engineering. What you're going to find is engineering information. Over here, you'd find physics information. There's some chance of finding life on Mercury. It's got the severe radiation penalty, and it's got a couple of other pieces of information. Trace atmosphere, low gravity, and you'd have to look those up to see them. The number here is, I believe, what it's expected to produce. And over here is how expensive it will be to build a base there in terms of supplies. Am I right about all this? I don't know. One thing you're going to realize is, yes, I've played through it a little bit, but it has not fully gelled on me. So let me take a look at what this, that's an or sign. Yeah, and I don't see the plus there. So I think that may be in addition to the world card, but we'll see when we run through the rules in more depth. So that's kind of the information on one of these. If we go a little further out, we go here and we have the near-Earth asteroids and the moon, and they have their own disks with their own kind of world card information. They're considered to be close to Earth. You can basically transit from Earth or from anything in the Earth box to these fairly easily. assuming you have the technology. In particular, if we come over here, only these 3 nations have the capability. Oh, wrong one. Nope, this is the right one. Okay, so these 3 nations have the capability to send their crew vehicles to the moon and the near-Earth asteroids. As technology improves, you're able to send your crewed vehicles further out. Robotic vehicles can go to these very easily, though. One thing you'll notice right away is, wow, there's a lot of crap on the board already. Look at all these flybys and everything. Russia, China, what the hell? Everybody's out there. Yeah. I was kind of expecting something more like a high frontier type situation, where you start out with, hey, I'm running a space program more or less from scratch. Nope. In this game, that space program has already kickstarted. You're sitting in the year 2030. In the year 20... just listening to that. Not long ago, at least. Okay. So, anyway, as you go out, some of these planets have more and more bodies coming off of them of some interest. I think the only really weird one is the sun here, which doesn't have a disk. That disk would be too big, and it would be really hot. You do have this weird deep space astronomy here. You can't get there. The only way you can look at that is with telescopes. Yeah, we got telescopes. We got some space telescopes out here sitting around Earth, and they can go search out there. They can also search within the solar system, though. Okay. Whew. So, where do we start? Did we miss anything? So there are some general concepts in the game, and I'm going to try to kind of follow the rule book here rather than just the sequence of play to capture some of these. So dice-wise, hey, I didn't explain the dice. So dice-wise, you have a couple of regular 10-siders here, and then you have a set of percentile dice, and I fucking hate percentile dice. In particular, these are ones where the tens digits are marked on them, and I'm always rolling them and thinking that they say 0 on them no matter what. I may have to replace that out just because I can't cope with reading it. Okay. They give this is how you should set it up. That didn't work for my table. Instead, this longer setup actually works better, and I think it's actually more appropriate. I don't know why you would want the 2 big planets next to each other like that. It really doesn't make sense. Okay. They may have just done it for the photograph. Okay, we have a diagram of what the world cards look like. I've already kind of talked about these. Here's one example. It has the 3 productions that are available on it, the type of world it would have to be on, a modifier to any exploration that's on that world, and then a research. From then on, if you build a base there, you can build a research station, and that's what it will produce. It doesn't impact your exploration research values, though. I think these do impact, so I think where we have these, I think these get added to it. Now, unfortunately, world resources, information, and exploration. Let's see. So here it says, see world box card slot below. That's this. Yeah, see, this doesn't really explain the world card completely, and that's kind of the thing. The rules feel like they don't go into everything as much as maybe they should all the time. So, for example, I feel here it should be telling me what that, I think this gets added to the values on the world card. And we may see that when we look at what a base can produce there, when we look at base production. You start with monies. Okay, so you got these different resource markers. Money and resources have a relationship. On Earth, you can exchange $1 billion for any resource you need, which is great because Earth is where you're going to be building your ships to begin with. And you find like this one is going to cost you 1 ore and 1 fuel to build. And the level 3 would cost you 1 ore and 3 fuel. Well, that means it'll cost me $2 billion unless I have raw materials sitting at Earth. I also have the right to sell any pair of resources, if I need cash, back on Earth for $1 billion. That's a bad deal. If I can if I'm hauling resources to Earth for some reason, I should probably be using them rather than turning them in for money. But I think chances are very low that you'll be hauling resources back to Earth. I didn't do it. Okay, we didn't explain all these things. Yeah, so these are your tech markers. There's 3 different types of tech: biology, engineering, and physics. At various times in the game, you're going to have to pull counters, and they have numbers that range, I've seen, from 1 to 5. You get them from exploration and from learning from your mistakes. You collect them up and they'll show up, I guess, just in your Earth resources and technology. And then at the end of every decade for when you do the economic phase, they get added to your tech track and you can spend them. If they run out, if a pool runs out for some reason, all of them are thrown back in the pool. Well, all of them are counted up, added to your tech track, and thrown back in the pool. So the basic idea is you go through an entire decade of draws before you get a reshuffle. But if you need to reshuffle before that, you get a reshuffle. These are basic. The chit pull is basically a reshuffle mechanism. And the information that's tracked here, you're not really giving information away because for the most part, the tokens that you pull are going to be revealed to everyone anyway during exploration. I don't think during disasters that, like, if you learn from your mistakes, I don't think you show those to other people. Politics markers. So you get these automatically during your economics phase, but you can also get them during the game. For example, when you explore successfully. You can expend these to modify your initiative die roll by 10% per marker spent, but you have to announce beforehand. They can add tech points to your tech bank when you're ready to buy, basically. You can convert them into money, $1 billion at any time. That sounds horrible. You can spend 2 of them to return an unearned mission to the pool and redraw it at any time. You don't like the mission you drew? So for example, he has to go to Callisto. Maybe that's too hard. Let me turn these up. So these are hidden. The other players don't know about your missions. However, because I'm playing solo and in order to track things, I am going to need them all face up. There's one other mission that anybody can complete. Whoever gets it first finishes it off. As soon as you use a mission, it gets expended, it gets dealt with, and you get your credit for it, and then you draw a new mission. And I've just jumped into that for no good reason. Okay. Yeah, so you can spend 4 of these politics points to buy yourself a victory marker. I don't know why you do that. At the end of the game, obviously. And you can attempt to increase or decrease foreign relations with another faction during the diplomacy phase. It's kind of interesting because you have to spend something that's valuable to do diplomacy. And yeah, we'll get to that in a bit. I'm a little iffy about this mechanism. Okay, missions. Missions themselves are going to be worth victory points equal to this value here. If they have a CV on them, you can't do them without a crewed vehicle. If they have a date on them, they don't show up in the mission pool until they hit that date. How do you get these? Well, if you do a good enough exploration on a planet to get something called a depletion, which reduces the number of times the planet can be successfully searched, that's on a world that's either the common mission or your personal mission, then you declare that your mission is successful. Now, if it has a CV on it, you must be looking with a crewed vehicle. And space telescopes can never succeed in doing missions, which is important because otherwise you could be like searching all over the world. Yeah, all over the solar system. When you complete the mission, you keep the mission marker for the rest of the game, and you get $1 billion during each production step for each one you have. However, you can only have a number of mission markers equal to the current decade of the game, starting with 1 in 2030, etc. If you complete a mission that you're not allowed to keep, you earn the extra politics marker that you get for the mission anyway, and you get a single victory point, but you have to return the mission. So if you're really good at getting missions, you'll be clearing through them, but they're only worth 1 each instead of much more. Trade markers. These are something I have not gotten to. These are in this bin. Okay. These are also picked at random. When you have colonies, well, yeah, colonies is a good word for it. Bases, basically. A buy marker, so these are going to be pulled during the economics phase, and during the trade phase, so it shows up on the per decade basis, but you're only allowed to do each trade once. A buy marker means that you can buy resources from the base. A sell marker means you can sell resources to the base. So if it says buy $1 billion 2 ore, it means you can buy 2 ore from that base for each $1 billion you spend. If it says sell 1 sup, 2 billion, it means you earn 2 billion per sup you sell. During the economic phase, you assign new trade markers to each base. When you trade with the base, it goes away. So it's basically a one-shot in 10 years of trade opportunity. And at the beginning of the game, there are no bases, so nobody's going to start with any of these. So any bases established in the first decade won't have any trade available for 10 years, well, until the end of the decade. Victory point markers. During the game, you might get victory points for something. These are just, single points that you get for particular events, and you keep them as just a means of tracking how many victory points you have. The policy and tech charts we've talked about, they proceed from left to right, with the rightmost being the most advanced. To develop a tech, you must have previously developed all projects connected to its left. So yeah, some have multiple prerequisites. Technology and policy benefits are only cumulative if they aren't connected by a development path. For example, one of them gives you a total of $4 billion, not $4 billion plus the $2 billion that an earlier thing on that same track gives you. Okay. Politics and foreign relations. I'm going to need breaks, and the battery is dying, and we're probably going to need more than one video. So I am going to take a break right now and wet my poor horse throat. And for those of you who've already called out the name in your head, yeah, Don Greenwood. And no, I didn't have to look it up. I just had to get away from my mouth for a little bit. I don't remember what else. I probably had something else that I forgot as well, just before I forgot him. Okay. Politics and foreign relations. So, each player is represented with a flag on each other player's track to indicate their current diplomatic situation. This includes the non-player factions. Your foreign relations modify your budget and determine how many resources you can trade with non-player faction bases. So 1B6R means you would earn an extra $1 billion and could trade up to 6 resources at that faction's base if it has a trade marker. So what you'll see is you're allowed to trade up to 2 resources at the beginning, but you would have to increase things to get better. And if you go to embargo or war, you don't get any bonus. So each person that you increase your trade with, you increase your diplomatic relations with, you get a bonus. Each person you're at war with, well, you can undertake military operations with them. An embargo is a slightly more limited warfare. So there are reasons to move the trade marker. It's not just, and it kind of makes sense that it costs you something because you gain something by being in a war situation. And you can play politics to prevent the war. So there's neat factors to all of this. I haven't seen it in action, so I don't know how much to trust it. You gain a politics marker for each alliance you have. Helps you maintain the alliance, actually. Relations are always reciprocal. If you're allied with someone, they're allied with you too. So if you increase your relations with someone, you will increase their relations with you as well. And they'll be further from war, you know. So there's something really interesting about this diplomatic system. It's very simple. I haven't made my decision yet on it because I haven't seen it in play. You can do the same to non-player factions to increase income and trade or in order to attack them. If 2 players have an alliance, they can form fleets together and move their ships together in the same turn as whoever's the later moving player. Hey, that's an empires and arms way of doing things. All allies have to agree for the allied fleet to operate together, but if somebody doesn't agree, then people can, pull out, right? Or be left out. So you can't take offensive action against a faction unless all allies in that fleet could do that action. But you can always defend together, even if you're not technically at war with one of the other sides that's attacking you. Okay, embargoes. When you're at an embargo, you're allowed to blockade their bases, intercept their LVs, lift vehicles that are carrying resources, and intercept and search for their crew vehicles to initiate combat. However, in that case, you must accept surrenders, which are not as bad as they sound. It basically just, it's an honors of war type thing more than anything else. When at war with another player, you're allowed to attack their ships and bases. However, these wars are limited, so you have to accept the surrender of bases, and you can never take offensive action against a ship or base on Earth or in Earth orbit, and you also can't level the Earth. Okay, the different types of ships. LVs are rockets that are used for launching REs and CVs, and they can also transport resources. Each faction has 4 different levels of LV, and LV 3 and 4 require a special tech to reach. LVs are going to cost, based on what's listed on them, on whatever side that you're buying, in ore and fuel. And normally, they're one use. They lift something up, and then you discard the rocket into space, and it becomes more of the space junk. However, there is reusable launch vehicles, which the U.S. starts with here, which give you a 75% chance of getting the entire LV back. And it's basically space shuttle type technology. Only North America has it to begin with. Oh, in addition to the technologies, each nation has its own ability. So like subtract 2 from the cost of a technology if you're the first to develop it. North America is good at coming up with new space tech. Counterpart to that is the Chinese subtract 4 for each player that's developed it instead of 3, which means they're better at stealing somebody else's tech. Everybody's got an ability. They're not balanced. The initial starting position isn't balanced. Obviously, the tech position isn't balanced. Does it all balance out at the end? I don't know. There's so much randomness in this game. Who the hell cares? It's like High Frontier, man. You're in it for the experience more than you are, for some kind of purely competitive type game. There are victory conditions in it just so that it meets that framework of being a game and to give it an end point. Okay. So, you can voluntarily destroy your LVs at any time, mainly because you need it somewhere else, but maybe because, I don't know, there's no limit on them, so... yeah, we didn't explain that either over on these cards. There's support limits, which are how many of each ship type you get for free. Robotic Explorers, there's a lot of different types. Probes, like I said, they're one use. You fire them off a flyby, orbiter, or rover, not a CV. I wasn't sure of that. And it gives you a one-shot with a better chance of finding something. Another thing about them is, when you fire that off, there's no chance of the base ship being damaged from the probe because it's not doing anything directly. Telescopes are used from Earth orbit, and they do long-range observation of any world. Flyby Spaceship, okay, the idea behind Flyby Spaceships is they can search and do exploration as they come closer and closer to the planet. When they hit the Flyby box, they get one search there. If they perform that search, they must immediately leave the Flyby box and move further out through the solar system until, I guess, eventually they reach Alpha Centauri, at which point they're destroyed, assuming they survive that long. Orbiters will go to a world and start orbiting it, and then they can search that world. They can also, if they're on the main planet in a system, search the worlds that are the little disks that surround that main planet. Those little disks, well, you've got a slight penalty for that, which is a bonus to sending there's a bonus to sending the orbiter directly to, say, Europa. Then you can just search Europa at full value. You get a -1 to your search value if you're doing it from the main planet. But, an orbiter sitting around Jupiter has a lot of different things it can look at. So there are advantages to doing it either way, depending on, what your focus is. Rovers. Rovers land on a single planet. They can never leave that planet once they land, and they tend to have a fairly good rating on them. That's about all with them, really. Crewed vehicles. Crewed vehicles are more general. They're going to come with a lot of information. Okay. Here. So the exploration value is here, and there's modifiers, mobile labs and spectrometers. The mobile lab does research work. The spectrometer, I don't remember. We'll hit them in a moment. If they have this symbol, they can carry cargo. If they have this little cog on their cargo, they can also do production work. These are ships that can do combat, and they may have drones, which will be marked with this and with that. And then on the back side of each ship, let's get a CV. So here's one that has an exploration of 4, a cargo of 5. Doesn't have all the things. On the back side, the reserved side, which unfortunately doesn't have a flag. I wish it kind of did. It does have the color, though, which is helpful. This is the cost of the full ship. So it would cost you 5 ore, 3 supplies, and 2 fuel to build this ship initially. Mobile labs allow you to roll 2 dice during exploration. Spectrometers, which are only on robotics, allow the owner, when they succeed in drawing a world card, to draw 2 and choose 1. And they don't have to actually apply it, but it gives them more options. Okay, at the beginning of the game, crewed vehicles can't go very far. You can go into Earth orbit with them. Technologies allow you to go first into the asteroids and the moon, and then the near asteroids, and then they start building up distance from the Earth. Basically, your crew can't go flying off to Pluto first thing in the game. Now, conceivably in High Frontier, you could send a crewed vehicle quite far away initially. It's really only based on, that game is really only based on your fuel capacity and your chance of breakdowns and such not. Here, it feels a little bit more reasonable. You know, getting to Mars requires, with a crew, requires something more intense, you know, than just getting to the moon. So yeah, the focus on the robotic exploration, I feel, is a little bit more realistic than High Frontier's handling. Okay, well, ships are normally resupplied in space, so you don't need to track life support, but the crew fatigue and equipment can wear out the crewed vehicles, so that they have to come home. This is, again, a different flavor from High Frontier. High Frontier, as long as you got the right materials to run the ship, it just keeps running. Here, though, if you choose to reserve a crewed vehicle, you can flip it over. If it gets recalled during exploration, production, or combat, it gets flipped over. If it can't reach Earth or a base that could unreserve it, presumably if a base or something like that is destroyed, or if it surrenders in combat. Okay. A reserved CV can't explore, produce, trade, build bases, or be part of a fleet that initiates combat. However, it can move, and in particular, and it can defend itself. In particular, it can move carrying cargo if it has cargo capacity, which is a big deal, because cargo capacity CVs might be best for hauling cargo in certain cases, in which case you can keep running it on just a cargo run and you never have to fix it. You never have to replace the crew. Give them any time off. You can build them in reserve status, in which case you pay 1 less supply and 1 less fuel. And this cost is what you're going to have to pay when you unreserve a crewed vehicle, so you don't end up. So this is kind of an interesting thing. They have a rule on re-entry. So this is a re-entry marker. Okay. And we have this little note, re-entry is one of the most dangerous phases of space mission. Well, there's no particular danger to it that I've seen. However, ships that are too big, CVs larger than size 4, cannot land on worlds with re-entry systems, symbols. Earth is one of these worlds, so if you want to build big ships, you can't build them on Earth until you get space elevators. Some planets, like Venus, have severe atmospheres. These are a little worse. CVs can only land or explore on these if you have a tech called pressure shells. On Venus, rovers have a +20 malfunction penalty unless you have this tech. Rovers are not allowed on the gas giants at all. CVs are. I didn't realize that. Even after you have pressure shells, it's treated as if it has a re-entry symbol, but re-entry doesn't do shit. The Sun and Jupiter exude radiation. So the Sun's radiation is represented pretty much in the Mercury box. I don't think we have it. Yeah. And pretty much everywhere in it. Mercury itself, the flyby, the sun observation, I think orbit. all will suffer from radiation. Over here on Jupiter, it's a little interesting. Jupiter itself has it, and some of the surrounding planets have it, but not all. And I've tried to align the planets, make sure that they're all where they belong, because it's the one planet where it kind of matters more than others. Okay. This, if you do not have active radiation shielding, a particular technology, you can't send CVs in there. And robotics suffer a 10% additional malfunction penalty if you don't have the tech. Okay. Bases, that's these suckers. These can be space stations on Earth orbit or at the gas giants, and surface bases on other worlds. Bases with settlements or colonies, and they can grow during economics. Depending on the facilities, spaceports, supply stations, research labs. Bases can build, repair, and service ships, produce resources, and produce tech points. Multiple factions can have bases in the same location, but each faction can only have one base in any given location. You build bases during and note, bases are one of the things you have to maintain, so. Yeah, Europe has one free base. They still have their 6. There are texts that increase the amount of bases and policies that increase the amount of bases that you can have out there. Okay. You build the bases during base construction. You can only build them where there's a base construction cost, which is the symbol here. Notably, the sun does not have one. And it makes sense that a CV can explore Jupiter. It's not actually going into Jupiter. It's exploring the orbital area. Bases are destroyed when they take a single hit in combat if they've lost all their facilities already. You can also voluntarily destroy them in order to rebuild them elsewhere. Facilities are things that are built on top of the bases. For the most part, each base can only have one type of each facility, but the facilities have multiple levels. 2 levels supposedly, but some of them upgrade. So spaceports are upgraded supply stations. So they're levels 3 and 4 of supply stations. Refinery are level 3 and 4 of mining stations. And you can't have both. The supply station spaceports allow you to refit ships and rebuild ships. And yes, even supply stations allow you to build ships, just smaller ships. Mining stations allow you to, they increase the base resource production. Well, they allow base resource production, and they increase it as they get bigger. Research labs give you base tech marker production. Defense networks are just against military, and settlements are really just a victory condition, but you can kill them. Okay. And there's no limit to the number of settlements you can have at a base. They're really just to show the colony. Okay. Fleets and stacking. We've already kind of talked about this. You can transport resources among a fleet at the start of any phase or step. You can destroy your own resources, except during combat. Fleets containing bases cannot explore or initiate combat. You have to leave the base. If you're with the base, you're really in here. Space elevators. This is a technology which allows you to treat your ships in orbit of worlds where you have a base as if they were located at that base for all purposes except fleet stacking for combat. Space elevator tech allows your ships in Earth orbit to be treated as if they're located at Earth, including construction of the ship. And you can freely transfer resources between Earth and a base in Earth orbit if you have space elevators. Damage markers. Ships and base facilities can sustain damage from combat and game events. Each marker on a CV reduces its exploration and combat values by 1. If it goes down to 0, it can't do that anymore. Each 2 full points of damage on a CV reduces its usable drone squadrons by 1. Damaged settlements don't count for trade or production modifiers. Damaged mining stations, refineries, and research labs produce 1 less resource or tech point per point of damage. Damaged spaceport supply stations count as 1 level lower than they actually are. You can remove the damage by paying an ore. This is considered a repair and requires a supply station or spaceport for a spaceship. And for a not-spaceship, I think you are a base, so or you're on a base. Okay, but you don't need a spaceport. That's important. All right, so we have a sequence of play listed here. The core thing is every decade we do an economic phase. At the beginning of the game, there is not going to be one, but I'll go through it first anyway. Each player gets 2 politics markers plus any additional ones from their diplomacy, from their space policy for diplomacy, and they get additional ones for each alliance they have. Then you roll to apply an event. I think that's 1 event for everyone. 2 events starting in the year 2100. Now all players roll percentile dice for initiative at the same time, and you can spend politics markers to increase your initiative roll for every 10% marker spent. The maximum number of markers you can spend is equal to your current initiative position. So if you're in first place, you can only spend 1. All players declare how many they're spending in previous initiative order before anybody rolls. Military policies can modify your initiative as well. It's not on the tech chart, it's on the policy tree, damn it. Okay. And then we reset the initiative based on those die rolls. Ties going to the player who had the higher initiative, the worse initiative. Then we go to a diplomacy step. You roll dice to see if foreign relations drift towards neutral. This will be done with a check on the original initiative order on the turn track, 1 through 7, I believe, for the different countries. And all relations of the one country that was rolled, if there was one, move 1 space towards neutral. And remember, they're reciprocal. Okay. Once we're through this economic phase, I think we have to pause. Okay. Then players can attempt to modify foreign relations. In reverse initiative order, each player announces how many politics markers they're spending to increase or decrease relations with each other faction. Foreign relations increase or decrease attempts cost 1 politics marker for the first attempt, 2 for the second, 3 for the third. Once all players have announced markers to spend on all foreign relation increases or decreases, you roll for the attempts. An attempt is successful on a roll of 6 or less. Apply the net result of successful attempts. So you roll each die. So if 2 players are trying to shift relations in opposite directions, you subtract successful decreases from successful increases. Yeah. So you're going to be rolling 1 die per attempt. Yeah. And they're basically 60% chance. You can only move to embargo if you have a military policy that allows it. And likewise with war. The player who's attempting to decrease it has to have that. Players can refuse to enter into collaboration or alliance if they wish, choosing not to allow anything to go above free trade. Which makes sense. Okay. Now you get Earth production. Your Earth production is listed per year here. Number of $1 billion and some free tech points that you get. You may get bonus cash based on policies, foreign relations, blockades, and mission markers. Remember, the mission markers give you 1 each. And in addition, each pirate that's active in the game subtracts $1 billion from each player. It steals it, I believe. Yeah, they go to the pirate cache. The pirate cache is a single pile of money that people can get from the pirates too. You may also have to pay maintenance. If you are above your support limits, which can be modified by technology or policies mainly, I think, then you have to pay. For each CV or base that you have above your limit, you have to pay 4 billions for the first, 6 billion for the second, 8 for the third, etc. Now, I think that is combined. So if you're 1 CV over and 1 base over, you have to pay 4 plus 6. Okay. For each non-probe RE in operation, you need to pay $2 billion for the first, $3 billion for the second, $4 billion for the third. Again, kind of a progressive cost. You can never go 4 above your support limit, not even outside the economic phase. So that's something to keep in mind. It's one of those hard little... That's a hard thing to remember, I can tell you. I wasn't anywhere near it, but yeah, that's going to be problematic. You may voluntarily destroy ships or bases to avoid paying maintenance costs, and you may have to do this if you don't have enough cash. Next, you can produce with your bases. CVs can also produce resources, but they do this differently. Bases will require a mining station or a research lab. The resource production is equal to the world production value, which is on the world card, otherwise 0, plus the intrinsic bonuses of the world, which is the value here, the plus value on here. And plus the station, the mining station or refinery. It's bonus. You don't produce anything without a mining station or a refinery, but these increase your production by 1, 3, and 5. Well, the first one just gives you the right to produce. For the production of tech, you earn tech points of the world card's indicated research type equal to the world card's research value, and you must have at least a small research lab to get it. You get additional points for a large research lab or for life or signs of life. You can only produce one of those, either resources or technology at the same base. Therefore, you probably don't want mining and research to happen both at the same base. There's nothing against it, but... each player who produces the same type of resource or tech ahead of you in the initiative order will reduce your production by 1. A reason not to crowd in with people, or if you are, to make sure that you're ahead in the initiative track. And also 1 for each pirate in the Flyby Box of the same planetary system. Now, if you have the trade routes tech, you're allowed to move resources between your bases and Earth, and you get a certain amount of transfers. You may not transfer to or from blockaded worlds or worlds where there's a pirate in the same planetary system, including the Earth. So if the Earth has a pirate, you're screwed. Now you roll to check to add a non-player faction base. I'm playing with all the player factions, so this doesn't happen. But basically, you roll a set of percentile dice and look at the percent probability indicated on the solar system tiles. If the world is located along a planetary system with a decade less than or equal to the current decade, I'm not worried about this. We're not going to touch this. So, starting in 2050, you start adding pirates and asteroids the same way. You roll dice to see if they're going to show up in the Flyby Box. In 2100, you roll twice for pirates and asteroids. And in 2080, it's another set of dice for pirates and asteroids if there are 4 more players in the game. For pirates, use the lower valued ones in the early in the game. Starting in 2120, they will be using a larger counter. So the counters for pirates are like this. This has a 1 combat value. This has a 3. I think they're all the same. Shit. Fuck. Okay, we're paused. Like I dropped something on the ground. Ah, crap. My battery's almost dead. Oh, there it is. I did. Way over here. It kind of flipped over my finger. All right. That's 1 settlement. Yeah, I got some of these counter things a little tight. I was using 3 trays, and I just decided, you know what? Chicken butt. Okay. Now, you also assign trade markers to each base that doesn't have one. They get randomly selected, both the resource type and the side. If there aren't enough markers to assign, players take them for their bases, 1 player at a time in initiative order from best to worst. The player with the best initiative position can assign them to NPF bases in whatever order they prefer. Then you're allowed to buy tech. Jesus. First, convert all your tech markers. They'll be sitting here to the track. Okay. Then, one at a time in reverse initiative order, each player can either develop one tech or pass. If you pass, you're done for this economic phase. To develop a tech, you must have developed everything, all the prerequisites. The cost and type of tech needed to develop a tech is indicated by its section in the tech chart. So 15 blue physics points. So here, this is physics points being spent here. This is biology being spent here. There don't appear to be mixtures. That's handled through the prerequisites. After each person has been able to develop a tech once, then anybody who didn't pass gets to go around again until everybody has passed. Any politics markers that you have remaining turn into cash or tech points, and then you have your banked tech points of each type. So, yeah, loses some of them. Each of your bases, you add up the settlement levels. For each full 10, you get to add one additional settlement to that base. For each fraction of 10, you can add a settlement if you roll that number or less on a 10-sided die. And that's a mechanism you're going to see a couple of times in this game. Exploration, for example. If your base is blockaded, it loses settlements instead of gaining them in the same way. In either case, you can roll 2 dice and choose which to use if you have unified space settlement policy. Then you're allowed to select a new policy. This is like a tech, except it's free. You can only have one of the unified policies. Are they the... So 3, no. The entire right-hand side is unified policies. So you can only go to level 3 in one of them. And people become kind of similar otherwise. But you could get rid of a unified policy so you can have another one, just like you could get rid of one of your 10 to make sure you get another one. Okay, I gotta swap batteries. All right. Build and service ships. At the start of each turn, you're allowed to build, service, repair, and unreserved ships. When you build a ship, the resource cost must come from the locations where you're building it. This is not that big a deal. You can do this in the regular turns. Oh, I'm sorry. We're done. Okay, we're done with this this part. Because build and service phase is not part of the economic phase. So, up this goes. And I'll be back later tonight to give you the other half of this video. It shouldn't be as long. But yeah, and then maybe I'll get started tonight. I hope. It'll be fun.